It's 1347. You wake up in a straw bed that's moving because the straw has lice in it. You scratch your scalp. More lice. You stumble outside, where the open gutter doubles as the toilet, the sewer, and the kids' playground. So how did medieval peasants not just rot from filth? They didn't. They were actually cleaner than you think. Way cleaner. And the methods they used were stranger than any movie has dared show you. Let's get into it. For most of your life, you've been told medieval people smelled bad, never bathed, lived in dirt? Yeah, that's mostly Hollywood. By the 1200s, the average European city had public baths on basically every corner. Paris alone had dozens. They were so popular that cities built them next to bakeries to share the oven heat. Cleaning yourself was a business. Peasants washed daily, just not the way you do. They scrubbed face, hands, and feet at home with cold water from a bowl. Then about once a week, they'd treat themselves to the public bath. Soak in a wooden tub, get a massage, maybe a shave, for a few coins. The Catholic Church was actually fine with bathing. The myth that medieval people thought baths were sinful? Made up. The Church only had a problem with bathing for pleasure, which, given what some baths got up to, made sense. So peasants weren't dirty. They had a system. That system was just, well, let me show you. A medieval public bath looked normal at first. Wooden tub, hot water, steam. What was in the water was the problem. You weren't alone in there. You were sharing the tub with 4, 5, sometimes 10 other people. Same water, same day, nobody changing it. The poor person who showed up at sunset was bathing in what 8 strangers had soaked off all day. Public baths were also social hangouts. People ate in them, drank in them, did business in them. Some of them quietly turned into places where men paid for sex after dark. So when historians say medieval people bathed regularly, yes, that's true. They were also soaking in a shared fat soup. Both can be true. Now imagine you're the medieval peasant who has to wash the family's clothes. You don't have soap. Soap exists, but it's expensive, made for rich people, and honestly not that good on oil and fat. So what do you use? Urine. Yes, pee. Specifically, pee that's been collected in a barrel and left to sit for 1 to 2 weeks until it goes bad and turns into ammonia. That ammonia cuts fat like strong dish soap. It also turns yellow cloth back to white. The process was called fulling. Workers called fullers would dump your shirt into a big tub of old urine and then stomp on it with their feet for 7 to 8 hours. It paid 3 times what a field worker made, which tells you exactly how bad the smell was. This wasn't a poor person thing. This was the normal medieval way to wash clothes. For hundreds of years, across all of Europe, your shirt was being washed in last week's piss. And it worked. Now, the bathroom situation. Toilet paper does not exist yet. It won't exist in Europe for another 500 years. So, what did they use? In a peasant home, your options were hay, straw, moss, the soft green plant on rocks, leaves, the wool from a sheep if you were lucky, or, and historians actually wrote this down, your bare hand. But the real trick lived in the public baths. They had something called the gompf stick. A gompf stick was a wooden stick, wrapped at one end, in a piece of rough cloth. It lived in a bucket. By the toilet, shared. You used it, then you put it back, in the bucket, where the next person and the next person also used it. Some public baths kept the bucket in vinegar between uses, to, quote, clean it. This is one of the main reasons the Black Death spread so easily. In medieval Europe, picking lice off another person was a sign of love. Everyone had lice. Kings had lice. Priests had lice. Your sweetheart had lice. The idea of being lice-free was as strange as the idea of being germ-free is to us. Everywhere. Normal. Just part of life. So families and friends would sit together, and one would put their head in the other's lap, and the other would slowly pick through their hair, finding lice and lice eggs and crushing them between their fingernails. This is where the word nitpicking comes from. It was warm. It was close. It was something a mother did for her child, or a wife did for her husband, or a young woman did for her best friend on a sunny afternoon. The only rule was, not at the dinner table. There were limits. They were medieval, not animals. For about 300 years, from 1000 to 1300, this whole system worked. Not perfect, gross to us, but it worked. Then the Black Death arrived in 1347, and the doctors, in their infinite wisdom, looked at the disaster killing half of Europe and decided the problem was the public baths. Doctors believed disease traveled through bad air. They called it miasma. just a fancy word for poison air. They also believed that when you took a hot bath, the tiny holes in your skin opened up, wide, like little doors, and if there was plague air around, it would walk right in through those open holes and finish you off. So the medical advice during the worst plague in history was, stop bathing, for real. Doctors told kings to scrub themselves with dry cloths instead of using water. Public baths were shut down. The public cleaning system that took hundreds of years to build died in 30 years. This is why 100 years later, kings in the time after medieval, called the Renaissance, were famous for smelling bad. Louis XIII reportedly took 2 baths in his entire life. The medieval people were dirty myth? It's actually about the people who came after medieval, who were dirty on purpose, because their doctors told them washing would kill them. The original medieval system was better. So go back to that opening image. You wake up in your straw bed in 1347. Lice in your hair, family next to you. There's a public bath 3 streets over. You're not disgusting. You're just doing the best a human can do with the tools you have. You bathe, you wash. You pick the bugs out of your kid's hair while you tell them a story. Then a ship arrives in Marseille carrying a rat with a flea on it, and a doctor in Paris tells you the bath is what's killing you. And for the next 400 years, your kids and their kids will be dirtier than you ever were, because the expert said so. Funny how that works.